All right, guys, welcome back. All right, so before we start the video, I want to share this beautiful artwork of the Power Artifact by Doug Schuler, and of course, the Kaladesh Inventions Chris Ron Mox Opal. And we're going to talk more today about, well, why some artists are ultra legendary and some artists aren't as legendary, and my take on why that's the case, and also how the Magic art world has changed over the years, and now more than ever, nostalgia is going to come back like crazy. Enjoy the video, guys.
Vintage Magic. Game, collect, invest. For more information about our consulting and professional services, visit vintagemagic.com.
All right, guys, welcome back. Welcome back. It's me, Daniel, with vintagemagic.com, and welcome to another video. And this video today, we're talking about the subject, might be a little controversial to some of you guys, but why are some Magic artists' artwork worth so much more than the other artists? And I want to talk about this in light of just, well, first off, this piece, the Kaladesh Mox Opal original art by Chris Ron, a friend of mine. He is an amazing artist. I remember him early in his career at a LuxCon years ago, back in the day in Pennsylvania. I remember seeing him, just sell some of his older works, and his art has this style and this mood that's so like old and like legendary looking. It's almost like it's real life, like old master style, but it has such a great, it speaks to me in terms of like the fantasy part. The lighting is so powerful, the mood. He's just a master at his work. And it's interesting because when I started collecting and investing in his work years ago, it actually, I was like, I knew instantly that this guy is going to be a legend, right? In years to come. If you're watching this video, I'm past, he might have passed. He is going to be a legend of all time of Magic artists. But I want to talk about, not just about really Chris, but also why do guys like him, Chris Ron, Donato Giancola, Therese Nielsen, Rebecca Gay, certain artists have reached a certain level of fandom that is so high level. And then you got the older artists like Dan Frazier, right? Christopher Rush, Rob Alexander, Jesper Meerforce. These artists have had some really beautiful pieces of work or legendary pieces of work. But in some cases, some of the other artists, and you can figure it out. I'm not going to name all the names, but there's other artists who don't receive well to the collectors and the investors. One artist I really love is Drew Tucker. Drew Tucker is one of the greatest Magic artists of all time, in my opinion. He is one of the original 25 artists. He was an alpha artist. He had the original Alpha Plateau, the Power Leak painting, and Clockwork Beast. And he did some Arabian Nights paintings and thereafter. And I think you gotta say, he's probably the most controversial artist. He did this painting called Dan Dan. It is a beautiful painting. It's lost. It's got stolen years ago. I had it actually originally. And you can see this fish coming from two pontoon boats. Look it up, Dan Dan, D-A-N, D-A-N. Arabian Nights card, not a powerful card, but really iconic for old schoolers. But the original painting was so amazing. It popped out from the water. And another painting that I really loved about his was City in the Bottle. Obviously, it's a City in the Bottle. And also Repentant Blacksmith. Look that one up. Beautiful artwork. And a lot of people don't like his art. They just don't like his art. They either love it or they hate it, right? Used all the time in lots of things. You might like me, you might love me, or you might just hate me. And that happens all the time, right? So art is subjective. Art is subjective to everybody. My opinions are going to be different than your opinions. But to me, for me, I think this type of piece speaks to me. It's beautiful. I'm an engineer by degree. I love the mechanical gears and the design of things, and the way Chris did the kind of the entire, all that metal, that Kaladesh inventions, right? That card, it's perfect, a perfect way to put it all together. And then the Mox Opal, right? The opal that produces that energy, that mana, that energy, right? Was done so beautifully. And I'll zoom in here in a second of the art. But another thing I want to mention is I thought about, why do people not like certain artists? The quality of the art? Is it they don't get back to them from a professional standpoint? Do they, I don't know, they haven't produced prolific art in general? Have they not done a lot of social media posts or stuff? Have they done controversy, right? Things that may affect people's opinions about them as a person, right? These all are in play. You know, I think there's no perfect formula to be a perfect like artist, I think artists just want to create, right? They're who they are. They're people, right? They're flawed. We all are flawed. We make mistakes. I make mistakes. But I think what I've noticed is that the artists that are really popular is that, like a Donato Giancola, for example. He is super prolific. He's been a mainstay in the community of imaginative realism for years. He teaches. He's done large, huge commissions from, tons of different companies and investors, right? He has a range of art, from fine art to fantasy art to Lord of the Rings to space art to robot art, whatever art you want to talk about. Donato is down by far one of the most legendary artists of all time, right? By far. And obviously, my heart goes out to, like one of my fan favorites for me is Rebecca Gay. I think her fine art speaks to me probably more than her magic art. Her magic art's really cool. I think it's great. You can tell that's early in her career, especially. It has a beautiful, whimsical, fairy, just storytelling, powerful message, right? Just emotion behind some of her art. But as she did her gallery work, I think for me, it really touched on things I really care about emotion-wise. So I really think her art is a unique style of art that's really fan favorite amongst, all the Magic fans throughout the years. And also another factor is international. A lot of people forget that Magic is an international game. And a lot of these artists I've named so far are huge names in international collector arenas. So by having not just domestic, but also international, Italians and Spanish and Asian countries, and also just all over the world, right? I'm leaving out a lot of places. Canada, Japan, obviously, Hong Kong, whatever, right? You'll know these names. And then you have an artist like Therese Nielsen. And I want to just say this because Therese Nielsen, to me, is one of the best artists of all time in Magic the Gathering history. By far. All time great. She has created some of the most iconic cards, like Force of Will, right? We all know that. The Force of Will Eternal Masters edition, and then other Angel cards, etc. Cool cards, like even the Hannah's Ship Navigator. Beautiful work. Not the most powerful card, but beautiful piece of art. Her style is so unique and so legendary. And there was this controversy about politics. I'm not going to go into it, but she was basically hasn't done any art for Wizards, for Magic the Gathering for a long time, right? Because of her beliefs. And that to me is sad, because some people should have the right to believe in, what they want, right? But at the same time, this is not a political channel. This is my opinions. I'm just trying to share that from an art perspective. She is definitely, hands down, one of the most legendary artists of all time. You got guys like Volkan Baga, who also kind of worked with Donato in the past. Volkan Baga is super amazing artist. He's done the Mox Diamond, original Mana Crypt for Kaladesh. Other pieces that you can look him up. And he's a German artist. Super professional, super nice, right? Doesn't do as much travel anymore. Similar styles to Donato in some aspects, but just really great guy and professional. So The pattern I'm noticing about these individuals has been professionalism, quality of art, prolificness, and also the whole thing about the international, worldwide thing, right? Now, I'm going to talk about my thoughts on, well, what do you do when you have art from other people that I just named? There's quite a bit, right? A lot of names. I'm not going to name specifics, but other names. Those pieces of art, in many cases, sometimes become very, very special and valuable later on down the road. It's not just the power of the card, but it's the art. I want to be clear that obviously, like Dan Frazier, amazing guy, works really hard. He's, I think he's almost 80 now. One of the original alpha artists, did the 5 Moxen, right? Legendary artist, right? And he also does a lot of artist proof drawings, other things, repaints, prints. He does a lot of stuff. He also has play mats, so a wide variety of products. He will be obviously one of the most legendary artists of all time in Magic. But is his art quality and everything the same level as a Chris Ron or Donato? To judge that, well, honestly, I don't think it is. For me, it isn't, right? But that's not the point. Sometimes you get a really powerful card, but you also get other factors, like I mentioned before. Professionalism, easy to work with, kind, happy, goes to a lot of shows, or goes to shows and just has, like a great interaction. When you contact his agent, Mark Aronowitz, gets it done. These are the things that are hallmark of a businessman, right? That are important for actual experience, and then to sell more art, be more prolific, and then success. So these other artists that are smaller, there are artists that are really professional, really kind, they do their work, etc., and they have cards that may not be as iconic here and there, but they haven't reached the level of success as Donato and all those guys. And I think that's okay. That's okay. In any type of collecting, you're going to have a range of artists and collectibles. You're not going to have everything is going to be a Black Lotus, type of level power card. You're not going to get the quality, the most quality stuff, right? The most legendary response to the community. And another thing I will mention is that a lot of newer artists are digital, which makes it really challenging for collectors to buy other pieces. Like they could buy artist proofs that are painted, etc. But you go buy so many prints and maybe some artist proofs, and then it gets kind of like, well, what else? I want something else, right? So prolificness, right? You got to have that type of original art and other digital art range, right? The ability for both in some way. I think another question that came up to me was the newer artists that people grew up with. So I grew up with obviously the vintage Magic artists, the original 25, and some of the even Chris Ron, right, type of thing. And what is the community going to look at for the newer artists? And sadly, my take on this is actually a lot of the stuff that you see that is like Final Fantasy, the Transformers, whatever, right? SpongeBob. These are all digital art, just kind of like Pokemon. They're just printing out a Chocobo, printing out a Pikachu and printing out a Charizard. It's just the same thing over and over again. There is no original art in terms of a physical piece. Now, they may be original for a digital standpoint, which is great. But sadly, the charm that I think that was what I grew up with original Magic, loving the art of the older Magic art and the traditional style, is kind of faded. It's kind of sad. In a way, I kind of wish maybe they'll do this. Maybe they'll do like a timeless masters. I don't know, some older style set where the art is going to be like the older days of Magic, where it isn't like the cards are so messy with digital things, like almost like a video game going on in one little piece of cardboard. I want to see just like the revisiting of the older stuff, the style at least. And I would love to see that. That's something I wish. But I think the newer generation is going to fall in love with a lot of just the pop culture that has already been around. And it's hard to understand as a collector what the identity is going to be. Like, am I going to like some of these guys who basically copy a Magic artist who basically utilizes a Final Fantasy character or some type of style guide that is from another character, and then I have to repaint that? Is that where this is going? Is that where they're going to collect? People are going to collect and remember? Or I have probably where I'm going to lead to this, the final part of this. Or do we just go back to where it began? Are we going back to the Black Lotus, the Moxen, the Time Walk, Time Twister, maybe the Mox Opal? I don't know. Where are we going with this art? I think we ultimately go back to nostalgia. And the reason why I say that is because look at Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy VII is one of the most iconic video games ever created. I grew up with that, loved the game. The art, everything about it is now the most high-selling Magic set of all time. But that is a reprint of an old game. Think about that. Newer art, I guess, here and there, but still the same characters. It's a revisiting of the past. Therefore, I always believe that, look at all the crossovers have happened for art. I think the best ones are going to be ones revisiting the past. And that's my final take on that, is that I think the past will always be in our hearts. When I pass, other people pass, that will always be the most memorable era of our time for Magic. All right, guys. Hope you guys got something out of the video. Love to hear your comments on this subject. Hope you guys are doing well. Take care.
Hey everyone, it's me, Daniel with VintageMagic.com. I want to share with you more about how we handle consignments. So to begin the consignment process, we actually need to start with the consultation service. In this consultation, I will determine what you're looking to do. And generally, consigners usually tell me, hey Dan, I'm looking to sell my items and maximize the value of their collection. After we determine through the consultation, I usually like to do an appraisal process. And an appraisal process in terms of a consignment is more fitted towards authenticity and valuation for current market values. From there, after a contract is crafted and signed, we will then receive the items from you. The reason why our consignment process is very thorough is we also identify cards that could be graded so then they can maximize higher dollar values. So the payment process is very simple. Once we have sold your items, you'll get an updated ledger and we will process payment for whatever form of payment you need. As a consigner, you're gonna experience our white glove service. What that means is I'm gonna personally handle your collectibles from beginning to end. And rest assured, the client that purchases your collectibles will also receive the same white glove service. It's a signature service that I really pride myself on in working closely with my clients.
Vintage Magic. Game, collect, invest. For more information about our consulting and professional services, visit vintagemagic.com.